Okay, so yesterday we did Hilchos Teshuvah, Perek Sheni, Halacha Gimel. Kol hamizvada b'devarim v'lo gomer b'libo lazav harzeh doma l'tova v'sheretz biado. Anyone who confesses verbally but does not resolve in his heart to abandon the chait, he is comparable to one who tovels on a mikvah with a sheretz in his hand, with a source of tumah in his hand. She'ein haTefilah mo'eles ad sheyashlich hasheretz. That the Tefilah, the immersion, will not help or will not be effective until he lets go of the sheretz. And likewise it says, one who admits his sin and abandons it will receive mercy. That's in Mishlei. And a person needs to specify the sin, as it says, that this people sinned a great sin and they made for themselves gods of gold. Okay, so our questions were, number one, what's up with the mashal of Tovel v'sheretz biado? Well, I guess, all right, so I should say it like this. Number one, obviously, if you don't do Teshuvah and you just say that you did Teshuvah, then it's worthless, right? And so why does he even have to say this halacha? Okay, but given he says it, what is the mashal of the Tovel v'sheretz biado? Okay, number two, what is Mishlei adding? Okay, he says v'chein hu omer umodav of Yerucham, and v'chein to me, I said yesterday that whenever you have like two reasons for something, you always have to ask why do you need both. You could say that v'chein just means like, and thus Mishlei says, and it's all one idea, because I was looking at the Gemara that this is derived from, and the way the Gemara says it is Adam sheyesh biado avera umizvada ve'eno chozer ba lama hodome l'adam shetofis sheretz biado she'afilu tova b'chol meimos shebe'olam lo as lo tevilah zarko miyado kaven shetava ba'arbaim sa'a miyad also lo tevilah shene'emar umodav ozav Yerucham. So it says, as it says, one who, it doesn't say it as a separate reason, but then it also quotes a second pasuk, ve'omer nisal levavena el kapayim el kel b'shamayim. Let us raise our hearts up. Let us raise our hearts to our palms to God in heaven. Okay, I want to work on the Gemara if we finish the Rambam. Okay, but that's that. Okay, so that was question number one. Why does he even need to say the halacha? Question number two, what does the mashal add? Question number three, why does he need Mishlei? Question number four, didn't he already say this halacha in Perek Aleph when he's talking about Vidui? When he says you're supposed to say, and I did such and such. So why is he repeating this halacha in two different prakim? Fifth question is, why does he include this v'tzarech lifrot es achet? You need to specify the sin. Why does he include that in the same halacha? Right? Sounds like a completely different topic. Those were our main questions. And by the way, just a side note, yesterday I was slamming on the doofus Rambams. And one of the reasons to slam on the doofus Rambams is because the editors of those Rambams made up their own divisions of the halacha. So they just made divisions wherever they wanted and just combined halachas wherever they wanted. Whereas the Rambam made the divisions based on the conceptual, So like here, it happens to be that the doofus Rambams have it right. But this is exactly the type of thing where like the doofus editor would be looking through this and say, oh, this seems like it should be a new halacha, chop the halacha, So methodologically, this is like a good example of that. Okay, answers to any of those questions that anyone has. I know you're withholding your answer till the final judgment day, but yeah. About the what? About the mashal? I don't remember what we said last week. Well, from the Kuntress, you mean? Yeah. Well, I actually have an idea based on the Kuntress, which I brought up, which I was gonna go through that, but yeah. Okay. Anyone have any answers to any of the questions? Let's start with the first half with the actually no, maybe we'll start with anywhere.
That's the question.
Yeah. Why does he even need to say this halacha? Because obviously, if you say I did Teshuvah and you didn't do it, then it should be like totally worthless. So it doesn't even need to be said, So why does he need to say, like, why is this even a halacha? 2, what does the mashal add? 3, what does the Mishlei add? 4, he already covered the specification of the chait in the first parak. And 5, why is the specification of the chait and this thing about doing Vidui without Teshuvah in one halacha? I don't know if that's the same order I said the questions in last time, but those are the 5 questions. Yeah. Chaim, didn't you have something? Oh, yes. Did you have an approach to something, or did you answer something yesterday?
I haven't thought about the sheriff's behavior.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Like Apostle how many would have that this wouldn't be like exactly the same.
Yeah.
Maybe it's still leading to why you need 2 answers.
Okay.
But like sheriff's behavior is like you literally have the exact chefza, so like I guess by that in that sense.
Yeah.
Not so to speak, you have that in your hand when you're doing it. But
Yeah.
here it's not you're not looking at the chait in the same way that as when you did it.
Okay.
Meaning the very thing that gives you the tumah
Yeah.
you're holding, but like
That's
At the
interesting.
shas-
I never heard that answer before.
yeah, at the shas like avera, in your mind it wasn't necessarily something that was bad,
Right.
but like here it's still something that was bad, but you still haven't necessarily like regretted it. So
Right.
you haven't it's undergone some sort of change in your mind,
Mhm.
but it's not quite at the level of like teshuvah yet. So
And-
you think that like it's different than the shirts.
Okay. In other words, and you're saying that because in the mashal, the fact that the guy is in the mikvah shows that he knows that he is tameh and needs a mikvah, yet he just hasn't gotten rid of it yet. Is that what you're saying, or you're saying something different?
I'm saying a little different, I think, which is that like the thing he's still attaching to, while he's recognizing that it's bad, he's still attaching to like the actual like essence of the tumah.
Right.
Versus here, he's like
Here.
here in the Teshuvah, like granted it's like he's standing in the mikvah, but it's also a little bit more than that, in that like the chefza has undergone a change in a shift in his mind.
So that's why I'm not clear. Where do you see that in the mashal, that the chefza has undergone a change?
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Oh, why
I
do you need the
guess-
plus
yeah,
in
I
Mishlei?
guess
Okay.
what I'm
I didn't
trying
even
to
realize you're talking about Mishlei. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I
That's
see.
all.
Yeah,
I got mixed up in what I
Yeah.
was trying to talk about. So yeah, that's why I think you would need a second thing, because you would think that if it was simply if he had only brought the sheriff's case, you would think that what the chefza, so to speak, has to be is the exact same chefza that you like did Navarro with, or,
Okay.
like became not good
Yeah,
with. Let's
yeah.
say. But in this case, from the fact like the difference between like a sheriff and like a mindset is that
Yeah.
the sheriff's is the sheriff's, whether you're holding it here or it's over there.
Yeah.
But like the mindset like shifts the chefza. It's like kind of how I'm trying to like look at that.
Okay, and where do you see that in the pasuk?
What's the question again?
One who admits and abandons his sin will be granted mercy. And pshat, by the way, is you need to do vidui and azivas hachet. And if you only do vidui, then if you only do vidui, then you don't get the mercy.
And Vidui again is is saying that you did something wrong.
Yeah, it's saying the entire Teshuvah process.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so we're saying Azivas Hachet comes after that.
Azivas Chet is so the order is okay. Let's go through the steps again.
No,
We
so,
got-
okay,
yeah.
that's why I got confused.
Azivas
The
Hachet.
pasuk seems to be saying it's the other way around.
Yeah, that's a good question on the pasuk, right?
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's why I got
but I think that's why the pasuk fits in very well. The pasuk says one who modeh, who admits his sins, which the Rambam is saying is vidui, the ozev and abandons the sin gets mercy. It doesn't mean that you do it in that order. It means that if you're just modeh, then you don't get mercy. But if you're modeh the ozev, then you get mercy.
Okay, so then I think that would fit in because the havamina by the sheriff would be that I have that different than the sheriff. I've said all the things that like I'm getting confused myself. Never mind.
Okay. Okay, sure. All right, so here's what I have for you today. Okay. I have a step, which is just one step, but I think methodologically it's important. And then I have a full answer, okay, which is unconnected to the step. Okay, so the independent step is answering the question of why the Rambam needs to bring this down here and in Perek Aleph. Okay, so what's a general methodological approach for when the Rambam codifies a halacha in 2 different places? Sorry, if he brings down one halacha in 2 different places, for example, one I just happen to remember is he mentions that women are chayav in Tefilah in the opening halachos of Hilchos Tefilah, and then buried at the end of Perek 6, he brings it down again, which I don't know the answer to that, but like that's, so why would he bring down a halacha twice? Or let's say he codifies it once in this sefer and once in another sefer.
To show 2 different like aspects of
Right, 2 different aspects or 2 different addresses. So here's the move, which again, this is not going to lead anywhere. So what I want to say is, what's the subject of Perek Aleph? Vidui, right? And the subject of Perek Sheni? Teshuvah. So I want to say that specifying the chet is a din in Vidui and it's a din in Teshuvah. In other words, in the Ma'aseh Vidui, the Tzuras mitzvah of Vidui requires that you say the chet, okay, and specify it. But then specifying the chet is also a kiyum in the quality of your Teshuvah, that it actually is part and parcel of doing full Teshuvah. And if you can't specify the chet, I mean, he says later on what happens if you can't specify it, but in other words, it has two different places. In other words, don't think that specifying the chet is just like a formality that you have to do in Vidui. It is that, you do have to specify it, but it also will help your Teshuvah. Now, I'm not answering how, okay, but that's the step. And I just wanted to take the step to show like what the methodological principle is.
So would the nafkamina about whether or not it would only exist in Vidui versus also Teshuvah be that if you weren't able to specify, you would think that there's something wrong with your Vidui, but and the only reason something wrong with your Teshuvah is because you're lacking in your Vidui, versus this is saying that if you can't specify it, you're not lacking in the Teshuvah because of the Vidui, it's also because of this this point of not being able to.
Exactly, yeah. And there are nafkaminas, yeah. In Perishani, yeah, it's a lack in the Teshuvah, yeah. Right. No, it's not obviously lack of Teshuvah. In other words, I think you could reasonably say that if I do full Teshuvah on a chet, right? That's a separate thing that I'm not answering that question right now. I'm answering the question of why do we need to replicate this halacha of tzarich lifrot es hachet when he already said that in Perek Aleph, right? That was our question number blah blah blah. Vasisi kafakach, we already know from halacha Aleph that you have to specify the chet. And in fact, look at the Pshuta, he doesn't acknowledge this question even. He just says, Vasisi kafakach ayin lahalan beis gimel shetzarich lifrot es hachet. I think it's a question though. And I'm answering it by saying that if you just had Perek Aleph, you would think that this is just part of the formulation of the mitzvos Vidui. They do in the Ma'aseh Vidui, you have to specify it. And then you see in Perek Sheni that your Teshuvah would be lacking if you didn't specify it. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna go a little bit over time. Okay. So here's that set that aside. I'm gonna give a completely new answer now. And this new answer is gonna focus more on the Teshuvah without Vidui. Okay. So if you looked at the Moreh that we did, where he says, what's the reason for Vidui? The reason for Vidui, according to the Rambam, is, you came just in time. The reason for Vidui, according to the Rambam, is to reinforce your belief in the efficacy of Teshuvah, right? That's what he says, he says that in the Moreh 3:36, okay, he says that Teshuvah is in this category of mitzvos that are designed to reinforce. It says klomar, meaning to say, beliefs that are necessary to have a well-ordered Torah society. It's impossible not to sin. Whether because you embraced a wrong view, or because your taiva overwhelmed you, or because of anger. If a person believed that he cannot correct this breach or this breaking, Yasmid Yaso, he would persist in his straying. The Shemagam Yosif B'Mirio Im Lo Tiye Lo Eitza, and maybe he would even increase his rebellion. About Im Hasvara B'Tshuva Yasar L'Muta, but if he has a belief in Tshuva, he will return to the good. V'Yashuv L'Matzav Mesukam B'Yoser, and he'll return to a higher level. U'Lioser Shalim Yimashaya Kodem Sheyachta. L'fikach Rabu, this is the key line. Rabu Hamaasim Hamachazkim Es HaHashkafa Hanachona Hazo Hamu'ila Ma'od. There are many actions which reinforce this belief, this beneficial belief greatly. Klomar, haviduin, etc. So vidui, the purpose of vidui in the Moreh is to reinforce your belief in the efficacy of Teshuvah. Okay, having said that, then I think the idea is that okay, so this is not my idea. Sorry, this is the Kuntress, okay, which we haven't talked about who the Kuntress is yet, but I'll fill you in afterwards. I'm going to try to just read this one paragraph without spoiling the whole shiur. Okay, so he explains it here. He says, "V'yesh lomar od shekidei l'kaim es ha-mitzvah." In order to fulfill the mitzvah of vidui, tzrichen lomar ha-vidui davka b'kesher l'teshuva b'leiv. You need to say the teshuvah specifically in connection to a teshuvah b'leiv. Okay, like doing actual teshuvah. Rotz lomar she'amiras ha-vidui Dehi lalamid shemo'ila hateshuvah shebelev tzricha lios davka biyachas leteshuvah shebelev she'Allah hi melamedes. In other words, the Vidui, which teaches you about the efficacy of Teshuvah in the heart, needs to specifically be connected to a Teshuvah in the heart, which it teaches you about. Like if it needs to be in connection to something real. Okay, here he's answering our question. Kasav Rambam Hilchos Teshuvah Beis Gimel D'imam or Vidui below Teshuvah shebelev D'dami l'tavo sheretz biyado v'lo kasav shelo asa klum. He doesn't say that if you do Vidui without Teshuvah, then you've done nothing. Okay. Kamosha kasav lagabe Tefilah below kavana behilchos Tefilah dalet tesvav, right? Right. There are Rambams where he says if you did this without the requirement, you've done nothing. Here he doesn't say you've done nothing. Ella de vidui beli tshuva havi davar ma. Doing vidui without tshuva is something mi'achar de malamed she'Hashem mekabel tshuva, because that vidui does teach that Hashem accepts tshuva, okay? Ella she'ino yote bo, but you're not yote with it. She'in sham yachas l'tshuva shebelev, because it has no connection to the tshuva belev. So in other words, the maaseh vidui has worth, which is to reinforce the belief in tshuva, but you're not yote because it does need to be in connection with the tshuva shebelev. Okay, yeah.
Isn't that kind of the question though, that if you're told shared to the other, you haven't done anything? So how is that?
You have done something, and that's, he says this elsewhere in the chair, but all you need to, Rambam says this, you need to let go of the sherets, but you already are, see, if you are standing right here and you let go of the sherets, you don't get Tara. But if you're in the mikveh and you let go of the sherets, I think that's what we said last week, then you get Tara. So we will end today, but what I want to try to do is expand that to Stoic Lifrot es achet, that and I'll just suggest this right now, but we can work on it more. If Vidui is designed to reinforce your belief in Teshuvah, right, and you're doing Vidui on a specific chet, so what is going to reinforce your belief in the Teshuvah more? Saying a stam Vidui where you don't even talk about the chet, or saying a Vidui about this particular chet and going into detail? Because remember, the Rambam also says the more you elaborate on the Vidui, the greater kiyum in Vidui it is. So I think that's what he means. This is consistent, I guess, with the approach I said before, which is that it's the opposite. The step I took before is saying it's a better tshuva if you specify it. Now I'm taking the approach that's saying it's a better vidui if you specify it. But I'm not answering the question of what is entirely of what is doing this halakha. Okay, there's still more to do this. And then just sneak peek for tomorrow. The Rambam seems to be learning this different from the Pshat of the Gemara. And I would really like to see how the Rambam gets it from the Gemara. Okay. But that'll be it for today. What?
That spider's been crawling now on the web.
Is it in front of me?
It's like, no, it's like, yeah, it's like 2 feet in front of me.
Okay, so I just won't.